What's going on, everybody? It's that time again, the AllSooners Podcast, episode 183, on this Wednesday, April 19th, 2023. Josh Callaway in Oklahoma City, Ryan Chapman and more, John Hoover in Tulsa. Gentlemen, how are we doing? Final week of spring ball.
Yeah, fired up for the final week of spring ball. After this comes a caravan,
Potentially.
recruiting camps, elite 11s, and all that other stuff. Yeah, it's going to be a busy week for us at All Sooners, man. It's culminating with what's going to be an all day affair at the spring game. We're going to be there all day.
Yeah, from Kyler's statue through to the actual spring game, post game, which, as you guys know, we work overtime to bring you everything as fast as possible in the recruiting weekend. So it'll be an all day thing. Although we say end of spring football, and my brain says, "Oh dear, softball postseason's here." That means that I get to live under a rock again.
Yeah, I'm a little annoyed at the Mother Nature because it's like been incredible weather the last day or two, and it's really nice tomorrow. And Saturday's not bad. It could be worse. Certainly, it has been worse, but it's only like 60 something. Like it's like pushing 80 today. Where is that on Saturday? I need that on Saturday. Very annoying. Very, very annoying. Especially if, like Hoop said, all day affair because Kyler's statue's at like 11:30, and the game's not till 2:30. So it's a whole thing. So I would have appreciated some nice 80-degree weather, but Oklahoma for you. So, like we said, it is the last week of spring ball. We have a lot to talk about on the show. It's a packed show. We've had guys hitting the portal. We've had commits. We had basketball transfer commit literally as we're starting to record. A lot to touch on. We've got a packed show for you. But let's start with the obvious. Spring game. It's finally here. Spring camp has come and gone. We're at the final week. We had our final post-practice availability yesterday. They talked about maybe adding another one tomorrow with Coach Venables. Nothing official there yet. We'll see if that happens. But we're on the home stretch here, spring ball. The spring game is on Saturday. All right, guys, we'll open it up. Spring game preview. What are we watching for? What are the players we're watching for? What's the storylines? Whatever angle you want to take, be my guest. Go for it.
So we talked to Jaden Gibson yesterday, of all people, right? And after practice, and he said, somebody reminded him, hey, he had a 95-yard touchdown in last year's spring game. He said, I'm looking to top that. What? So
yeah,
we've been talking all spring about no Marvin Mims, no Theo Weiss, guys with the experience are moving on. They got Jalil Farouk back, 2 years experience, really one. And then Drake Stoops. That's their guys. Would I be crazy? Would I be out of line to say that Jaden Gibson might top his 95-yard touchdown last year in this year's spring game? That's someone that I think has had a really good spring. Just talking to his teammates, talking to his coaches, you get the sense that that's one of those guys on offense that could be really made that next step. He came in, he talked about it yesterday extensively. Skinny kid, fast but tall, played way over his pads. He talked about getting his pad level down. He talked about bulking up and getting stronger and things like that over the past year. So I think he's a guy that, yeah, he did have a big standout play last year. Micah Bowen's on the passing end of that thing. But he might be a guy that you watch tomorrow, or Saturday, and he's got 6 catches for 130 yards. That might be something that I'm just saying. He's had that kind of offseason.
Yeah, we're all going to be watching Jackson Arnold, but as far as like what might actually make it onto the field this fall, for me, it's got to be those wide receivers, not just Gibson. I mean, if you've listened to this pod, I'm very, very I don't think Austin Stogner is the answer at tight end. If you saw him get cooked in a 40 with James Skalski just on Twitter the other day, him being the only option, he wasn't just this unbelievable performer before he left for South Carolina. And now Shane Beamer is talking about upgrading in the tight end room. If you read the quotes coming out of spring in Columbia, the wide receiver room has to take steps forward, and it has to be a couple of guys to do it. Because I just don't think Oklahoma's going to have that production at tight end that they had with Braden Willis. And so it's not just Gibson, but what does Andrew Anthony give you? We've heard from a bunch of those wide receivers that Andrew Anthony, the way he gets off the football, his speed, all of that guys can't stay in front of him. What does that look like? Gavin Freeman, what does he look like? Do we get to see not just Jaden Gibson, but Nick Anderson and J.J. Hester and L.V. Bunkley-Shelton, names that were around the program last year, but due to injury or just falling down the depth chart, Like, what does that look like? Because outside of that, you're going to flip over and be like, does Oklahoma have a pass rush on the defensive side of the ball? The other thing that they lacked last year, because those are the two, I think, biggest concerns for me are who are going to catch passes outside of Stoops and Farouk, and can Oklahoma get to the passer? And I hope that we'll be able to at least get a glimpse into who those guys might be on Saturday.
Great. Real quick, Ryan, you mentioned Bunkley Shelton. If you go to practice, these little open 40-minute open practice sessions that we have, and you watch the wide receivers go, okay, line up, guys, we're over here, we're doing this drill, ready, 1, 2, 3, go. LV Bunkley Shelton has been among the first guys out, and I mean first, not Stoops, not Farouk. It's been a lot of LV Bunkley Shelton. Now, those other guys have got number 1 reps or first snaps or however you want to term it. I'm talking about drills, okay? Who's the first guy out there in the drill? He's been out there a lot, and that tells me that's an indicator. It's one of those indicators. How's he been practicing? How's he with the team? How's he, in terms of respect and leadership and stuff like that? He's really seemed to have stepped up at least his place on the team, his spot on the roster, his seat in the room seems to have upgraded a little bit. So he might be someone worth watching as well.
Yeah, the low-hanging fruit, I think, is obviously the young hot shots. Jackson Arnold certainly included in that. I'll talk about it more later with the open practice portion. We'll get into that, I think, a little bit in the second segment. But he has looked better as the spring has gone on. What does he actually look like in the stadium, crowds full, and all that? That's exciting. Of course, that's obvious. And then you lump into that, again, with the young hot shots, Peyton Bowen, PJ Adebore, maybe kind of include Hassan McCullough in that a little bit. He's not a 5-star incoming freshman, but just all the new guys. It's, it's exciting to see what they look like. And then just in general, does the defense look any different? I don't know how much you're going to get from a spring game. It's always so hard to tell. The crowd never knows what to do with it either, because every single time something happens, it's both good and bad for Oklahoma. Literally everything that happens in a game. There's not one play that happens that's good for offense and defense. So it's hard to know what to make of it as it goes, but just does it feel different? Does the physicality look different? Do they look faster? Things like that. So excited for the spring game. What do you guys think of the format? If you guys looked at this, it makes no sense. It's baffling.
It's too much for me. It's too much. It's over my head. I'm too old to follow something like that. Yeah, no chance. To put me in a calculus class, and I'll do about as well.
Yeah, I think that here's my big takeaway from the spring game scoring format. It is locked in 100% that it won't end 10-7 like Florida's, and Florida has been clowned universally for their spring game ending 10-7. I will not be keeping score. I will not even be attempting to wrap my head around it. It frankly doesn't matter. But all it means is that if anyone, for whatever reason, is reading through spring game stuff, they won't see takeaways from Oklahoma's spring game that finished 10-7 like they did with the Gators.
No, it ain't gonna. It's gonna be like 47-43 or some weird number like that.
No, it's gonna be like 125 to 113. It's going to be obscene on the scoreboard.
If you haven't seen the format, I suggest you go just look at the Twitter on OU football and whatnot. It's baffling. Offensive scoring is mostly straightforward. It's the defensive scoring that really gets crazy because they get points for sacks and pass breakups. That's going to be fun, deciding what actually is a pass breakup because it's worth 2 points. It's the defense has got if the defense doesn't win, I think OU's got problems because the defense gets points for like anything. And the offense has to score. The only way the offense scores is if they score. The defense can score from like I said, sacks,
the defense gets points for a score too. If the offense kicks a field goal, the defense gets points for that. What?
I think my favorite part is that if a punt happens, the offense is it 2 points for the offense and 5 points for the defense. So why not just make it 3 points for the defense?
I said that exact thing. I was like, it's just the same. Yeah. You're just netting 3.
They're doing some kind of weird net system.
Yeah, it's you can tell that
whoever came up with that.
You can tell that Oklahoma has a defensive head coach because defense is. You got to bet the house on defense. If there's a line on this, put your money on defense. White team.
Take the over.
Gosh. But anyway, that should be fun to see. Looking forward to that on Saturday.
Another fun one could be the running backs, Josh. The running backs could be fun to watch because there's been so many of them hurt. We know Javonte Barnes isn't playing. Yesterday, Gavin Sawchuk was leading the room out there on the practice field. So the 2 freshmen coming in, Hicks, I almost called him Caleb Boone, Caleb Hicks and Dalen Smothers. Those 2 guys are coming in with a lot to prove. right? And they both have that youthful, like, give me the ball, coach. I know I can do it. Don't worry about too many carries. We could see a lot of Tawee Walker, 2021 MVP Tawee Walker could get the ball a lot again this year. And he's got a lot to prove. So Chapman McCown's been hurt yesterday at practice. I don't think Marcus Majors was a full participant. So I saw him stretching, doing that stuff. But, those are a bunch of young, able-bodied, fresh-legged guys who are going to really have something to prove to their coach, DeMarco Murray, as well as the fan base, and they want to see their name talked about on social media. So, yeah, man, you could be talking about a lot of guys breaking a lot of runs. Of course, I don't know how many points you get for breaking a 12-yard run or something like that.
Nothing.
Maybe that's take away from the defense. I don't know.
I think Venables just benches you. If you're a running back and you get an explosive play, I think Venables is just like, you're done. What I'm looking forward to on that front, though, is that if it's Smothers and Hicks that get a ton of the work, those are guys that you expect to see in the future. It's a little bit different. Like, no disrespect, but I guess I won't name names here. But token walk-ons, when you had a weatherman going up against a walk-on who shares the name with the current defensive tackles coach, or not Bates, it was Hudson, whatever. When those two guys are going at it and they're the stars, you're like, okay, that's great. Neither of these guys are ever going to play meaningful snaps because they're just walk-on undersized running backs. If it's the two freshmen that are running out there, it might not factor into this season, but at least we'll know for in the future if those guys can be contributors, which I'm excited because that's a little bit different than just the typical whoever the fourth string running back is shows out because that's the person that's only getting huge line share of the carries because they're not afraid if he gets dinged up going into summer workouts or something like that.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing about spring is people want to project it to the fall. Don't project it to the fall. Just enjoy the contact, enjoy the physicality. I wrote a story yesterday about the new improved physicality of this team and how every position they talk about being more physical. Just enjoy the collisions, enjoy the pad popping, enjoy the trash talk. Don't try to project these guys into next fall.
Yeah, that is a slippery slope. Every once in a while, there's guys who break onto the scene in the spring game and really do some nice things, and that does translate. I think of like Kendi Brooks in 2018. Wasn't really a household name at that point at all, and he came out and he kind of balled out in the spring game, kind of like, okay, Kendi Brooks ended up being obviously one of the more underrated OU running backs of the last decade or so. Obviously, we all remember 2 years ago, Caleb Williams kind of opening eyes like, okay, he might be ready now, and then he was ready now. Will we have something similar happen on Saturday? Maybe with Jackson Arnold. That could happen.
Hey, Baker Mayfield, his first scrimmage, came out and went 11 of 11.
Yeah, I mean, you don't worry too much, but a lot of these guys do good in the spring game.
Well, I'm fascinated because the spring game can go one of two ways for your new shiny quarterback. It can go like it did a couple years ago for Caleb Williams, or it can go like it did last Saturday for our friends down in Austin, where 3 quarterbacks played and Arch was clearly the worst. Like noodle arm, no arm strength. He looked like the stage was too big and a half full, which is not like a knock. It's just, there's not a full college football Saturday pomp and circumstance. And you had a guy wilt. And so in the early Arnold v. Manning derby, Jackson Arnold has to go out there and look better than Arch did, I think. Not for anything other than Twitter cred and fan bases yelling at each other.
And that was something that I would say about the Arch thing, because there's both sides of it where people, Texas fans are saying it's a spring game. People are overreacting to a spring game. I promise you, Jackson Arnold's going to look a lot better than that. I promise you he will. He's gonna tear it up, I think.
Yeah, that was rough to watch. I mean, if anything, Arch comes out of that thing third string behind obviously Quinn Ewers and Malik Murphy, the other freshman. I mean, holy cow, that was a rough performance. Somebody posted every play on Twitter, on social media. They posted every play of Arch Manning's. And you just kept waiting for him to do something. The only things that I saw was a 4-yard check down and a 6-yard out or something like that. It's like, oh, he's got to get better. He'll get better coaching. He'll get better reps. He'll get more comfortable. He's still supposed to be in high school, remember, at this point, guys.
Yeah, it's just I think what everyone was just waiting for is that one throw where it's like, it doesn't even have to be complete. It's just one of those things where you're like, oh, that's a throw that he can make. And like the out routes were underthrown and behind the receivers and they were sliding in to try to catch them. And you're like, oh no, oh no. That like timing being off, fine. Underthrowing an out route, no, not what you need.
What do you guys think about, another storyline, obviously. What's the expectations for the crowd? Because that's something that has been talked about a lot. Last year was obviously record-setting. It was the most well-attended spring game of any spring game in the country. This year, that bar is high. I think Ohio State already had 75,000 at theirs already in hand. So that's a high bar to try and beat. Last year, we talked about it many times, was the perfect storm of things. But now we're here. You've had all the spring camp. What's your sense of the fan base's excitement, and what do we think the crowd's going to be? Because I don't really know what the crowd's going to be like.
My question is, does anybody have Trace Adkins on speed dial, just in case you need a concert at halftime of the spring game, kind of boost the crowd a little bit? I don't know. I'm not calling anybody out, but I don't think it's going to be anywhere near what we saw last year. The spring game record before last year was something like 40,000, if I remember right. So if they hit 40,000, I think that would be a good number. If you hit 50, I think everything over that would be gravy. So I don't know. There's not a lot to see. There's some players. You want to go out and see the players, but you've already seen the Venables spring enthusiasm. You've already seen an entire season of Brent Venables. So now your expectations are set. There's no hate this year. I mean, the hate will never go away. Don't get me wrong, but there's no like immediate, let's show Lincoln Riley a thing or two. That's not hovering over the program anymore. And then everybody loves Kyler, but everybody really loves Baker. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I think Brent's more likely to dial up a older rock band than an older country star. I think,
that's Neil.
I would be much more on board with than than the prior spring game musings. Yeah,
that was so bad. By the way, I'm not sitting here saying that was awesome. That was bad.
Yeah, I'm expecting it to be exactly like what other typical spring game crowds were because, we talked about it a bunch. Last year I don't even think it was about Brent. It was about FU Lincoln. This is Oklahoma. This is all this stuff. I don't even think it was really about Baker. I think that all of that helped, and none of that is working toward this crowd this year. So unless you're just really stoked to come out and see Jackson Arnold or something like that, which I think that most people with spring games, stuff like that, they'll just be content to pop that bad boy up on the ESPN Plus stream and call it a day.
It is funny because like Hoover referenced, and OU fans did an amazing job last year, so I'm not here to dog on OU fans by any means. It's a spring game. It's a hard thing to get people to come out and get excited for. But before last year, the record was not that high. So, we've done this revisionist history thing where, we just act like OU fans pack out the spring game all the time. And they did it once. We got to see it more times. And I was looking for the tweet. I couldn't find it, and I just did find it. So there was a tweet about Ohio State getting 75,000 to their spring game, and Justin Harrington quote tweeted it and said, "Watch what OU football fans do. Tune in all caps." Does that mean he's expecting a better number? Is the team expecting a better number? I don't know. So we'll see.
Yeah, good question.
Has it been oversold?
Temper your expectations. We don't know what the weather. As Josh talked about, it's 60-something degrees.
Okay.
Not raining, I don't think, is it?
Not right now.
Hopefully it doesn't keep anybody away. Thunder's not playing, right? You got that going for you. So there's no home playoff series again. So I don't know. We'll see. If they hit, like I said, if they hit 50,000, I will be color me impressed. Of course, I said the same thing last year, where I set my expectation bar at about 50,000, and they blew it out of the water. So if they do that again, I will be twice blown out of the water.
Yeah, I think it just comes back to what's the draw this year. I think the fan base is just fine with Dylan Gabriel. I think the fan base likes Brent Venables, but is not fine with how last year went. Is Jackson Arnold enough? Well, they've had really highly touted quarterbacks before. Caleb Williams wasn't enough to draw out a huge crowd, right? Peyton Bowen, PJ DeBoer, I just don't excited. People excited for them, yes. Drawing out a huge crowd to work your Saturday around, no, because we've only seen it once, and it had nothing to do with the product on the field.
Tell you what, and to tie it back into the format conversation earlier, missed opportunity I said it many times, Dylan Gabriel on one team, Jackson on another team, that would have been awesome. And it's obvious why OU wouldn't want to do that, because if Arnold outplays him and his team wins, now you got that pressure cooker going. But missed opportunity. But we'll see. Looking forward to it on Saturday. Obviously, we referenced it a couple of times. Kyler Murray is going to get a statue. So that'll finally officially happen. Not nearly the level of hoopla as Baker's last year. And like Hoof said, Baker's beloved. He's one of those beloved players of all time at OU. So it's hard to replicate that. Kyler played 1 year, not a fair comparison. We're not talking about the players, just how much the fans respond to them and whatnot. And I have a hard time imagining anybody will ever match Baker with how beloved he is in Oklahoma. But just some thoughts on the Kyler statue, what it's going to look like and how cool of a moment it will be for him. He's going to be there, obviously. What pose does he go with? And what are some Kyler Murray memories when you look back in the rear view as you kind of reflect on his time on Saturday?
I try to sometimes feel like this is a personal thing. I try to take my reporter hat off, because you can make phone calls and you can look into what the statue pose is going to be and the big reveal, and I kind of like being surprised. So I try to try to stay uninformed if I can. And plus, it's Kyler's big moment. I don't want to catch a photo of it driving down I-35 around on the back of a trailer and post it. I'm not going to do that, even if I could. Shout out Nate. But I got one pose for Kyler, and it's that little leap he does going into the end zone.
Airborne statue.
I don't know how you make it float. Can they have a repulsor lift or something on the bottom and just make it kind of hover there? I don't know. That's going to be tricky, but that's what I remember him for, is the way that he just made the game look so easy. Everything he did, there were times where it looked like he was the only player on the field, because it just came so naturally to him. We saw him in high school go whatever it was, 43-0 as a high school starting quarterback. That didn't work at Texas A&M because as a true freshman, he didn't get the coaching he probably needed and all that kind of stuff. We know the story. Gets to Oklahoma, has to sit again, finally gets that coaching, finally gets that opportunity, and the game, it was like he was back in high school again. It was just so easy for him. So that one pose where he's kind of prancing into the end zone, that would be my vote.
Maybe they take some pages from the Dirk Nowitzki statue that they've got in Dallas, where they were able to artfully have him, fading away where he's in the air while having the little platform thing that he's standing on. And it looks cool. So that's one way to do it. For me, funny enough, my lasting memory of Kyler does not come from his Heisman Trophy campaign. It comes from the year before, the very famous game where Baker Mayfield perished for one whole drive. Baker was suspended for one series, and it was like, okay, this will be cool. Right. Everyone gets to get a little glimpse of the future. What's the Kyler Murray show look like? And I hope you didn't miss it, because in 10 seconds, he was, 60 yards down the field. It took him 2 plays. And I remember being like, Kyler, enjoy this maybe you take 4 or 5 snaps to get the touchdown, as opposed to just first play, you're inside the 5, you step out of bounds, and then touchdown. That's my memory of Kyler, that he played the game at a different speed than anybody else in college football, and that it to your point, John, it felt so easy and casual that, okay, this was his big moment. How does he respond by almost breaking it open? He almost just played one play in the suspension game because he was so efficient offensively.
Yeah, no, that was really the perfect, okay, next year OU's going to be just fine, because that guy's not normal. And I think that play, and I think of when the season opener in 2018 against Florida Atlantic, where he just ran around like Bo Jackson Tecmo Bowl in real life, just making everybody look like they're not moving. He was unbelievable. And I personally have a special affinity for that 2018 season. I was in school at the time, and I covered Kyler when he played baseball the years before, where obviously he was a big deal. He was a star already. I'm not going to pretend he wasn't, but he wasn't anywhere near when he started playing football as a starting quarterback. And so I feel like I covered him a long time, and that 18 season was awesome. So many memories from it, and for my money, that season is as good as any season in OU history. If you're giving me one season of one quarterback to try and win a title, I'm having a hard time not taking Kyler Murray. He was so much better than everybody else out there. And that was the worst OU defense of all time, too. They gave like 40-plus points to Kansas. And they still went to the playoff that year because he was just absurd. So really fun year. It'll be fun to kind of relive it briefly. I'm sure they'll have a special video and stuff like that. OU always does a great job with that kind of stuff. So that'll be cool.
That season, Josh, their defense was so bad they had to fire their coordinator at mid-season with the Heisman Trophy winner on offense. Think about that. I can't ever remember something like that happening before. And I want to take you back to the previous year, 2017, that Ryan referenced. That was 2017, so it was 6 years ago. What if let's say this year, after this season, let's say Dylan Gabriel comes back and says, you know what? I'm going to play my 6th year. I'm coming back to OU. What does Jackson Arnold do? What does Michael Hawkins do? What do those guys that have committed do? You know what Kyler Murray did? Kyler Murray's like, you just gave Baker Mayfield an extra year of eligibility when you said you weren't going to. What about me? Fine. You know what? I'll stay here one more year and I'll be the backup. And he did. And he stayed for 1 year and he was the backup quarterback. If that was 2022 or 2023, would he have transferred? Maybe, probably. I mean, I'm projecting today's standards onto what we know about Kyler Murray in 2017, 2018. But the only thing we can project is that he probably would have transferred. Transfer portal good, transfer portal bad. Yeah, probably a little bit of both. It says a lot about Kyler. It says a lot about how much he believed in himself, and it said a lot about the level of coaching that those guys were getting from Lincoln Riley as the quarterback coach. And he was obviously promoted to head coach the year before, and before that he was just the coordinator. Think about that. And he brings back Baker and he brings back Kyler for 2017. I don't think Kyler was like uncomfortable in that situation, but it was definitely something that didn't sit well with him. He loves Baker. Baker's his brother. He said that a million times. He embraces the pressure, but at the same time, it was like, that could have been my year. I could have had another year of NFL earning potential or won the Heisman in 17 or whatever.
It is a fun alternate dimension to think, if Baker doesn't get that extra year and Kyler's the quarterback in 2017, what does it look like? Does it look any different? Because Baker was unbelievable that year. We all obviously know that, but Kyler was different. Kyler was a different dude. So it's fun to think about.
God, the defenses were so bad.
Horrible.
Like any other like top program should have won 2 national championships with that, and instead Oklahoma didn't even make an appearance.
Literally, like,
that's not going to happen again because they're going to be in the SEC now, where it's going to be a lot harder to score 40 and 50 points a game, but at least you don't have to give up 40 and 50 points a game every week.
Literally,
and no Kyler Murray's are walking through that door. That's the other thing too.
He's a one of one. He really is. Literally 5 NFL offensive linemen, and obviously CeeDee Lamb and Marquise Brown and just
Mark Andrews.
Just absurd. Grant Calcaterra in his heyday, just absurd.
That was like an elite Georgia defense in 2017. They shredded it, and the OU defense was so bad. Gosh.
Unbelievable time. But it'll be cool to celebrate Kyler a little bit. Like we said, you can't replicate the hoopla of Baker. You just can't for a million reasons. But it'll still be a cool thing, I would imagine, on Saturday. He'll get his statue in Heisman Park. Who will be the next one? Jackson Arnold one day. You never know. We'll see. But I think that concludes our spring game preview. Any other things for spring game that you're looking forward to?
I think we got most of it. How good is how improved is the defense? Are they more physical? I think that's something that everybody's going to be really have their binoculars tuned to.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we'll look forward to it on Saturday. We'll be there all day in Norman, like Hoof said. Kyler statue coverage, game coverage, all of it on Saturday. Looking forward to it. All right, we'll take a timeout. We'll come back. We did go to practice yesterday, so we'll wrap that up along with some player interviews, some guys we hadn't heard yet from this spring. So we'll wrap that up a little bit. We'll talk about the guys with the portal and the freshest commit for the 2024 class as well. We'll talk about that next right here on the AllSooners Podcast. On Twitter, you can follow AllSooners at @all_Sooners. Ryan's _Ryan Chapman. Who's at John E. Hoover. I'm at Josh M. Callaway. Our website is allsooners.com. We are a Fan Nation affiliate, part of the Sports Illustrated Network. All right, segment 2, wrapping up spring ball like we were just saying. We preview the spring game a little bit, but there is still some spring practice to be done. We had practice yesterday. We were out there. Hoover and I were. We also got to talk to some players afterward as well. So wrap that up a little bit. Ryan, you weren't able to be there, but we'll get your thoughts as well from afar. Hoove, practice, talking to players. What stuck out from yesterday? Whether it's from seeing the guys get out there and practice on the big field, which was kind of cool. They practice in the stadium, and then we talked to players afterward.
We had a first yesterday, and that is our first interview with not a coach.
Right.
Our first interview with an analyst. We got special teams analyst, Jay Nunez. So that was good. Asked him a lot of questions about special teams, and he was very, with his answers, it was very, you should have seen it. Actually, you can see it. It's at AllSooners.com. Check it out. He explains that on game days, John Finley coaches the what team does he coach now? Punt returns. DeMarco Murray coaches the kickoff returns. Other guys, Bill Biedenbow, for instance, coaches the point after protection or something like that. I can't remember all the breakdown just off the top of my head. But he would express his philosophy on coaching those guys up during the week, and then on game day, the coaching staff, the other 10, the full-time coaches, do a great job with those guys at those positions. So we're talking about kicking, punting, all that stuff. They're replacing a punter, obviously an All-American type punter. He said they're better at pooch punting now than they were last year. He said they had 10 touchbacks when they're trying those coffin corner kicks last year. This year, in practice at least, the pooch punting has been better, so they're pinning people deep, giving the defense a little bit better, a little bit more room to work with, obviously, and a little bit better situation down by the goal line. Said Zach Schmidt is working on clutch kicks, working on big kicks. You know, we talked about it last year. He missed five field goals, 6 field goals. He said he kicked 66%, which wasn't good enough. So that was really kind of an enlightening, one of the more enlightening interviews I think that we've had so far this year, is just getting to talk to the special teams coach and getting his perspective on all that.
If it's funny that he mentioned the pooch kicks. If you guys remember last year, it drove me insane. Michael Turk was not good at them. He's a very good punter. He stunk at those, because whenever they would kick from the 40 and kick it a touchback and net 20 yards, I wanted to spike my camera. Like every time all season long, it was so stupid. They kept doing it all year long. So that's good to hear, because that
Turk was trying to pin him down at the 1, and you can't pin him down at the 1. You don't hit a golf shot, right, an approach to try to knock it into the cup or get it within 1 foot. You put it in a bucket, and you hope to get it in, and then you one putt from there. Turk was trying to be perfect, and he kicks the ball with such force that when it hits the ground, it doesn't die, it doesn't check up, it continues forward.
That actually was one of the topics of one of the weirder post-game press conference exchanges. I don't remember who was asked about it. Basically the question was asked, it looks like you continually are trying to just put it right at the 1, and Brent Venables didn't really want to get into it. But it was something they weren't very good at last year. So interesting to see how that changes. Just real quick, again, I wasn't there. The thing that stuck out to me, though, was the Bothroyd interview. Not anything that Bothroyd said, but right there at the end as I was watching that, when he was just kind of giving the open-ended, who else is kind of standing out, stuff like that. He was talking about how Trace Ford, once he's been back in practice, he said he made 10 plays and had 4 sacks just the other day, and that him getting off the football has been really good. Even if Trace Ford's only a third down usage for this Oklahoma team because of his injuries, things like that, it's been a decade where the conversation around this defense is they can't get off the field on third down. You throw one guy in there like a Trace Ford that can maybe get you a couple of sacks, and suddenly that conversation feels a whole lot different.
The famous saying Maya Angelou said, they won't remember what you say, but they remember how you make them feel, right? So that's what I take from some of these interviews, is not necessarily what the guys say, but how they project themselves. And so I'll just tell you real quick one on Caleb Schaefer. Turned the camera on. I was the first one. I was dead center. He looks at me, he looks around, and he looks at me, and turn the camera on, and he goes, "Okay, who wants to go first?" So I thought that was interesting. And then when Jaden Gibson's interview was over, we turn off the cameras, and he immediately puts his hand out and starts shaking hands. And then he goes around over here and he starts shaking everybody's hand. And there was 10 or 12 of us. He shook all our hands. And then he walked around behind the group of reporters that he had just interviewed with and shook all their hands. He went over to another interview and said, this is first time I've been interviewed like this. I got to shake all y'all's hands. It's good to meet y'all. And he shook every hand. There was probably, what is there on a normal game or a normal practice, like 25 of us.
Yeah.
He shook everybody's hand and looked them in the eye and said, thanks for coming. Appreciate y'all. It's like, what? So that neither one of those has ever happened to me before. Who wants to go first? And thank you for coming.
Yeah, he shook my hand. I wasn't in the scrum. Felt kind of weird. But I was like, you're welcome. I didn't ask you anything, so I wasn't over there. But yeah, I know the practice was a little different because, usually the practices are at the practice fields and they were in the big stadium. I can't say I've ever been at an OU practice in the big field. Obviously they do it, but
I don't think I have.
It was kind of weird. I kind of liked it. It was easy to get around and things like much easier than the practice field. So that was cool. And like I said earlier, Jackson Arnold, to me, no BS, looked better every time. Every time out, every week we go out, usually on Monday or Tuesday. So like quite literally a week apart each time. And every time he looked more and more comfortable. His throws were on the money more and more. Yesterday was really windy. Didn't really matter. Not that they were throwing like crazy deep or anything, but he was cutting right through it. Perfect throws like every time. I watched him throw maybe 15 balls. It was not one was not on the money. I mean, so he just looks sharper and sharper and sharper each time, which is exciting, I think, for OU fans, certainly.
Yeah. Yesterday was super windy.
Yeah.
Like at one point we were talking to Jaden Gibson and like the wind came and we all went like this, blew us literally like almost over. It was like a 50 mile an hour gust of wind. Swirls in that stadium. These are things that I think about now because I have a microphone. So you might hear the wind on some of those recordings, but Jackson Arnold, boy, that's why they call it practice, because he just gets better and better and better. And you're right, he has gotten better every time that we've seen him, every time that he's been out there. So that's something that's got to be encouraging. Is it's more comfortable to him. It's more like we talked about Kyler. Everything's coming easier to him now. He's still having to think his way through a lot of things, but yeah, he's looking good. I was impressed with the linebackers again. Again, maybe they have more linebacker coaches than any team in the country. They've got Brent Venables, they've got Ted Roof, and they've got James Skalski, and all of them are in there getting their nose in with those guys, just yelling and screaming and holding dummies and throwing dummies at guys, and they got those big old rolling donuts that they tackle. That's, if you ever get to go to an OU practice, watch the linebackers. It is strict entertainment.
It's hard not to get sucked into linebackers. It really is, because especially because Venables is just, he's over there being him, and it's like 10 minutes will go by, like, okay, I got to get some other positions. It's easy.
Yes.
It's easy to get sucked in.
I probably shot 300 photos of Brent Venables yesterday. He's got his hands on guys. He's got that little grit in his teeth. It's like, golly, stop giving me so many opportunities to take photos.
The, like yelling at guys with a whistle in his mouth thing, which is always fun.
Spit flying out.
That reminds me, something that we didn't talk about in the spring game preview segment, so sorry to not keep this nice and buttoned up. We knew from last year it was almost the unfair advantage for the defense that Brent Venables was standing right over every play and then giving the coaching points on the field during the play, things like that. With Beanbo being the offense head coach and Bates being the defense head coach, do we think we see Levy come down from the press box and do a similar thing for the offense on the field, or do you think that he steps up and stays in the press box and just calls all those plays in from upstairs on Saturday?
I think it's going to be more of a dry run where they call plays from upstairs.
I was going to say, yesterday during practice, Levy and Roof were in the box. So that might be a little bit of a hint there. I will say, too, one other thing from practice yesterday. Got to talk to Jaden Rowe a little bit, and I asked him – he got asked a bunch of stuff. He was very good. And we talked to him about some of the other corners. And the way his face lit up when I asked him about Kendall Dolby, excited to see this guy because, I don't want to say he's overlooked or forgotten. I mean, he's a JUCO guy who came in, but that guy is going to play and be a big impact. And so excited to see him because, the way his face, he smiled immediately when I said his name, and he was like, he hits people. I think he called him a hitter like 3 times. So that's exciting. And so we'll look forward to that. He said the same, kind of a similar about Josiah Wagner, too, who is, by all accounts, had a great spring ball as well. So exciting time.
Yep. I told you guys when I talked to Kendall Dolby in December, I think it was. I think it was December, might have been late November. Talking to Kendall Dolby and just looking at his film, the dude is absolutely fearless. His reaction time is instantaneous. So that's someone that, as we'll get into here in a minute, it's someone that is absolutely in the rotation, if not in the starting lineup.
Yeah, that feeds right into the portals here. So you had a couple of portals, which not totally unexpected, a little weird at the timing, but not really. I mean, the portal window opened on the 15th, and then it closes on the 30th. So you have 15 days to get yourself in there in this spring window. Obviously, a lot of teams have already played their spring game. There was a lot of spring games last weekend. There's a lot this weekend too, but OU's on a little bit the later end of the spectrum. So a couple of guys, Corey Robertson, D-tackle, and Jaden Davis, longtime corner who's been around forever, also entered the portal. So they both hit the transfer portal. Again, the window's open. Spring ball's not over, so it feels a little weird, but not that weird. So a couple of losses here on the defense. Now, these are guys that are at positions of pretty good depth, and probably that's why they made the decisions that they made. They kind of saw the writing on the wall that they may not really be in the the forefront of the rotation. But what do we think about this for these guys, and how big of a blow is it for Oklahoma, and what does this do for the depth and all that good stuff?
Yeah, first of all, there's going to be more. Okay, probably after the spring game. I think guys are still competing, still trying to figure out where they sit, and they'll talk to the coaches. And I think that's what you saw with Corey and Jaden, is you saw them probably at some point in the past few weeks talk to the coaches, say, hey, coach, where am I at? What is my long-term projection? Am I going to play? Probably not. Let's see if we can get you in the portal quickly and find you a place to play. I'll speak up for you. I think there was a mutual kind of parting of the ways for both those guys. Corey, you remember when his house got destroyed in February, early March, whenever that was? Tornado came, and so I jump in and I'm writing that story, and I'm looking at what he did in 2017, 2019, 2020, 2021, and I'm like, wait a minute, how come they didn't enter his 2022 stuff? How come his 2022 games have not been put into this database? He didn't play in 2022 at all.
Yeah.
Which is shocking to me. I was like, wait a minute, he didn't. He was like a guy. He was like a frontline kind of rotation along with Josh Ellison and who am I thinking of? Defensive tackle, 88.
Jordan Kelly.
Why does my brain stop working like this?
Jordan Kelly?
Yes. So there's a handful of guys that he was in the rotation with for 2 or 3 years, as well as Isaiah Coe and guys like that. And you're waiting for one of those guys to elevate themselves and kind of explode and have that kind of takeoff, that career takeoff, and none of those guys did. And now you're seeing dudes jump into the portal. Ellison did, and now obviously Corey Robertson. So not a huge surprise there. Kind of halfway expected that one. The Jaden Davis one surprises me a little bit, only because he was a starter on opening day. He was the opening day starter 3 years in a row. So at some point he got the message, probably during spring football, that he wasn't going to be the opening day starter, or that things were not looking up in his direction. So at some point he probably said, final year, I can go back to Florida. He's from Fort Lauderdale. There's some speculation that he might end up at the University of Florida. If not, at the University of Miami. If not, then probably South Florida. We would be reunited with his fellow classmate, Jeremiah Cradell, who's now a coach at South Florida. So anything could happen, but there's some chances for him to go back to his home state. A little surprised that he left. Not surprised at the timing, because if you think about it, guys, you're going into your final week of spring practice. What do you have to gain if you know you're not going to be on the 2 deep? What do you have to gain if you know you're not going to be starting? Only thing that could happen is you could get hurt, and then all of a sudden you're in for a longer transition wherever you go.
Yeah, or on the flip side of that is, like, if Florida's already done their spring game and that's a spot you're looking at, just use this as an example. Florida will be looking to fill their roster now, so waiting a week, that spot might be gone if that's just one instance. The Davis thing to me was like the biggest indication that, like, everyone loves their roster in the spring, so there's not a whole lot of this position group's been bad or anything like that. So I feel like I do a lot of picking through, okay, how much of this is like just hype, coach speak? How much of this is no, people are really happy? We heard so much about the secondary. Well, if a guy that couldn't hold down their starting job year over year has finally thrown their hands up and said, I've been passed up what we think by enough of these guys that I need to find a new spot. I think that's the best sign yet, that what Brent Venables said about that secondary, how Jay Valai, how Brandon Hall feel about that secondary is filtering through, that we're going to see some new bodies back there, which is a good thing with how that secondary's been the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, and especially with guys like we talked about him earlier, Kendall Dolby. Kendall Dolby's coming in from junior college, taking that job, or Jaden Rowe, or somebody is coming in and taking that job. So that's the way college football works now.
Yeah, both guys are at positions that are clogged up. I mean, the D tackles, you obviously Coe's there. They brought in Jacob Lacey. They moved Jonah Laulu inside. Yep. You have Jordan Kelly, who's been there forever. I mean, that's 4 guys right there that probably are above Corey Robertson in the pecking order right now. And it's not like either of these guys are young. I mean, it's not like some young guy biding their time. They're veteran players. And then, yeah, same goes for Jaden Davis, because Woody is Woody. We know he's number 1. But then you have Dolby in. Gentry Williams is somebody that I think they would like to probably work in there a lot more. Like who said, Jaden Rowe probably fits into that mix. Josiah Wagner's had a great camp. I mean, there's a lot of options. And then when you're a veteran guy, you probably don't want to chance it as much. You're kind of thinking, okay, if I don't want to roll the die, I want to feel a little better about my situation. So it makes sense for both those guys. And like who said, won't be the last. There'll be more coming up here probably pretty soon. The portal is still open for another 11 days. So probably more to come.
Yeah. Jordan Kelly, it's not you, it's me. You know, I'm a union guy. You know, I love my union guys. So it's not you, it's me. Just the way my brain stops working sometimes.
He's been around. He's been around a while, Jordan Kelly.
He's earned my respect, and I couldn't remember his name because I'm an idiot.
To be fair, we roll through like 90 names a year, and then with the portal it goes.
True. Very true. The numbers are still throwing me off. Some of these number changes I'm still not used to.
Yeah.
It'll take to see. I need games. I need games to see it to start to sink in.
I asked you one yesterday. I said, "Who's that number 30?" You said, "Dummy, that's Trace Ford." Wait a minute, what?
Well, it's throwing me off because he's 30 and Bothroyd's 80, so I have to just a beat of like, okay, wait, Ford is 30, yeah, Bothroyd's 80. It's a challenge. It's a challenge every time. All right. Did get a commit as well. So a couple of guys leaving the portal. You also made a commit over the week that'll make OU fans feel nice about things. Kind of an interesting player here. So his name's KJ Daniels. He is a 5'10", 150 is what he lists out on 247 wide receiver in the 24 class. He's not rated. He doesn't have any stars or anything. So he's not rated in any metric or anything to go off of over there in Louisiana. He does have some offers. Nobody huge, no blue bloods. Cincinnati, Houston, Louisiana Tech, Texas Tech, and Tulane. And then obviously OU, who he committed to earlier this week. Interesting player. If you watch the tape, clearly has a lot of athleticism. He's a burner. He's very fast. A lot of his highlights were just flat out running away from people. He did make some tough contested catches, but above all, he's speedy. So we'll see how he fits into things. But, interesting get here. Because like I said, not highly sought after. Doesn't have a lot of huge, offers. Doesn't even have a rating from 247. He has a 3-star from Rivals, I think. Interesting player.
Yeah, Rivals has him as a 3-star. He got offered by Texas Tech last September. Okay, and who was the wide receivers coach at Texas Tech at the time? Emmett Jones. Emmett Jones comes to Oklahoma, and he has to convince Brent Venables. Yes, I offered him at Texas Tech. Yes, I think he's good enough to play here. Yes, I realize he doesn't have a 24/7 Sports or On3 or ESPN recruiting profile. He doesn't have any stars. He doesn't have any ratings. He's very underrated. I'm trying to think, has there been any other 5'10", 150 receivers who have blazing speed, who were not rated coming out of high school, who did well at Oklahoma? Yeah, maybe Marquise Brown might be one.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of comparison there with this guy's elite speed. He's a 10-4 guy. He's a legit track 10-4 100-meter guy. He's also a classic slot receiver type player. There's a lot of talk that Oklahoma's getting ready to get commitments from a couple of big-bodied outside 6'3", 6'4", 6'5 guys on the perimeter. So this is your guy that's going to come in and play the slot, going to move around a little bit, catch passes over the middle, going to do some bubble action and stuff like that. Okay, so there's a pretty good feeling out there that this kid's underrated. That when when KJ Daniels gets a little more out, gets his name out there a little bit more, and people understand that he's committed to Oklahoma, and there's a reason he's committed to Oklahoma. You're going to see his 24/7 profile, ESPN profile, his On3 profile. Everything's going to be, oh yeah, no, we missed him. So let's start him out with a 3-star rating and see where he goes from there. So I think you're going to see a correction in the market, so to speak, when it comes to his ratings.
Yeah, what makes it so interesting is like if you put him up against a guy like a Brian Westco who's uncommitted, but we know Oklahoma heavily pursuing. Like those are about as different wide receivers as you could get if you're just building height, weight, all that stuff. So it'd be really interesting to see how Emmett Jones, because with Levy, it felt like at UCF at Ole Miss, it was very much a cookie cutter, height, weight, whatever. And then last year trying to sift through that's what made that so interesting. You've got a new wide receiver coach, one that'll probably have a little bit more control over the recruiting board than an interim guy. Kind of interesting to track. For this one, though, he's the burner, but I think that this is the tale as old as time. Where is he from? Louisiana. Yep. So, Oklahoma fans, congratulations. You have between now and December to hope that LSU doesn't offer him.
Mm-hmm.
And they probably will.
I haven't talked to him, but that's the score in that state. If LSU wants you, you play at LSU if you're from Louisiana.
Yeah, and they probably will. If nothing else, because Oklahoma, he just committed to Oklahoma. So we'll see how that goes.
He loves him some Emmett Jones, though. That's one thing Oklahoma has that LSU doesn't is Emmett Jones.
It's true. That is true. He has that, obviously, like you said, who offered him a long time ago at Tech, so that they've had a rapport for a while. So we'll see how that shakes out. Interesting player, though. Excited to see how that progresses in. Like who said, if that profile gets a little juicier over time. All right, we'll go ahead and take a timeout. We'll come back, hit some other sports in the last segment. Basketball made a transfer commit finally. They added somebody. They also hired a coach. So lots of news there. We'll wrap up the weekends for baseball and softball, and a natty is in Norman. We'll talk about that as well next, right here on the AllSooners Podcast. Final segment of the AllSooners Podcast, episode 183. Hit some other sports here. We'll send you on your way into your spring game weekend in the great state of Oklahoma. All right, men's basketball finally making some moves. It took a while. It just was all negative since the season ended. It was nothing but people leaving and leaving and leaving, coaches, players, whatever. They made some additions, which is a welcome sight for OU fans. Armin Gates, new assistant coach, comes aboard. He was at Oregon last year. He worked with Porter at Loyola in the past, so there's an obvious connection there. He's also coached at Florida and Northwestern, TCU, Kent State, and Western Kentucky. So he's kind of been around the block a little bit. He was at Northwestern when they first made the tournament the first time ever in 2017. Kind of cool little feather in his cap there. So we'll see what kind of role he brings. Obviously, really hard to gauge these assistant coaches in hoops because it's not like football where it's like they get a position or something. So we'll see how he fits into the fold. And then just as we were starting to record, they added a transfer player for the first time. Javian McCollum from Siena comes aboard. Now, he's a guard. I know you fans are probably thinking we need bigs for the love of God, but he is a good guard. Only 6'1", 170, but last year for Siena, pretty good numbers. 31 minutes per game, started 25 games for him. He was their leading scorer at just under 16 points. He can shoot a little bit, just under 50% from the field, or on twos, I should say. And he was about 36% from three. So solid pickup here, looks like on paper. Backcourt duo with Milo Zuzan, some things to like there. What do we make of these ads for OU Hoops? Obviously, the McCollum is very fresh. It just happened a little bit ago, but gut reaction, I guess, to these.
Gut reaction. Yeah, I don't know much about Javian McCollum. 16 points a game at Siena. You take that with a grain of salt. He was a 3-star prospect coming out of high school. So there are players in the portal. Basketball's a little different. There are players in the portal in basketball who can come in and transform your program. You can get a Max Asmus, for instance, from Oral Roberts. If someone like that's in the portal, like he is this year, who can score you 25 points a game on any level of basketball. He's just a gifted scorer. Some guys, more of a team player, more fit into a system. So we'll have to wait and see where McCollum fits in Porter Moser's system. The hiring of Armin Gates is interesting to me because he's coached for some pretty good coaches, good head coaches. He was also at Nebraska. He was with Dana Altman in Oregon. He knows his way around the basketball floor. He knows, and he's worked with Porter before, and he's worked with Ryan Humphrey before. So he's got a lot of going for him just in terms of what he knows, who he knows, what he can expect working for on this staff. And then, his time at schools like Oregon and Nebraska maybe show, that whole mid-major thing of living in a small town and coaching for a small school and all that doesn't necessarily apply when you get to a place like Oklahoma. So maybe he's got some, maybe he's been prepared for that kind of quote unquote step up, if you will.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is he's worked with Moser before, and they've had a revolving door at one of those assistant spots at least. Dildy's really the only guy that has stayed through the whole thing. David Patrick, yeah, he took a head coaching job, but again, it was Sacramento State. It's not like it was a Godfather offer. KT Turner went to Kentucky, and then 1 year later, he was at UT Arlington. So all the stuff about you can't turn down Kentucky, well, he left Kentucky to work at UT Arlington the next year. So to build any kind of culture, stuff like that, they've got to find stability on staff first before you can start doing some other stuff. So that's important. McCollum coming from Siena, I think Oklahoma fans will look to a solid performance against Florida State and Ole Miss in the ESPN Events Invitational that shows, okay, maybe he can translate. Grant Sherfield played at a much higher level of basketball 2 seasons ago and couldn't cut it night in, night out in the Big 12. I'm not going to bank on another undersized guard being able to make that adjustment from Siena to the Big 12. So I don't think he'll have much of an impact as far as 20-point score or anything like that. But beggars can't be choosers. This program needs bodies, and they need people who view themselves as scorers, because that's not what Milos Uzan really was last year. He can develop into that, but he was more of a great distributor. But as far as getting 15 shots up a game, that would be a huge step for Uzan. So someone to fill that void. Yeah, there have been plenty of people that take that step up, and he's got 2 years of eligibility. I'm just not banking on him being much of a game breaker for the Sooners. They're putting together a group of 5 roster to go play in the Big 12.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, Ryan, because the numbers look pretty good and the tape looks pretty good, but the Big 12 is just different than that level. And last year at this time, I probably said a lot of the same things about Joe Bamesteele and Grant Sherfield and all these other guys they've added over the last couple of years. That it's like, oh, look at that, they've some athleticism, can shoot a little, blah blah blah, and then it just doesn't translate to the Big 12 because the Big 12 is just a meat grinder. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Also,
could you say the same thing about Moja Gibson and Elijah Harkless, guys who came in from mid-major type programs, had a minimal impact at Oklahoma, and then left to go to other Group of 5 type programs?
Yeah. North Texas ain't Siena.
Right.
Would just be like it. This is another step up from even like Harkless is maybe the best version of that because he was coming from a JUCO, but he had the size and physicality. Like I'm looking at another undersized guard. You had Moja Gibson who came in from North Texas and couldn't find consistency. Yep. Sherfield came in from Nevada, couldn't find consistency. So now I don't want to put too many expectations on McCollum coming in from Siena to come in and be a 18-point a night guy that like the OU offense needs to anchor around. You know what I mean?
And Harkless built his game around defense anyway. He wasn't relying on scoring. He took the points when they came to him, but he wasn't a guy who said, I got to go out and get 16 a night.
All I know is, watching Austin Reeves ball out in the NBA playoffs over the weekend, that the Andy Bernard, I wish we knew we were in the good times before we left them 2 years ago. Austin Reeves, Brady Manick, Davion Harmon, Moja Gibson, Elijah Harkless. That was our starting 5. That sounds incredible right now. Incredible. Would kill to cover that right now. Because it's bleak. It's bleak. They made the tournament and won a game in the tournament, and everybody was kind of like, man, we didn't know what we had. We did not know what we had.
When everyone was criticizing Kruger for like the offense in the last 4 minutes just becoming the Austin Reeves show, little did we know, like 3 short years later, LeBron would be waving everyone off. LeBron James in the playoffs cleared out, was like, nope, Reeves has got the ball, his ISO possession, let's all go back and play defense.
He scored like 12 in a row in a road playoff game to win in the NBA. That happened. He's performing the best of any former OU player right now. Sorry, Ryan, with Trae Young.
It's not
at
close.
The moment. At the moment.
It's not close.
At the moment.
I would trade everything to have Austin Reeves running the Hawks right now.
It's unbelievable. It's really unbelievable. And then to kind of add to this entire point and to wrap it up, Bijan Cortez, Wichita State. Benjamin Schroeder, George Washington, Joe Bamasteel, VCU. Those aren't Power 5 teams. So, I mean, it lets you know that the quality of the roster just hasn't been there. Now, we don't know where Jalen Hill's going yet. I would imagine he'll end up at a Power 5, but I don't know. Jacob Gross, too.
I doubt Jalen Hill's going to leave the conference, frankly.
Yeah, me too. He's got a Big 12 written all over him, quite frankly. And those other teams know him so well, obviously, also. Shifting over to softball, weird weekend for them because they went to Oxford, Ohio for 2 games on a Saturday that were both run rules, and they had to come back. Like, that seems like, was that really worth the bang for your buck? I know weather obviously was a big part of the influencing that, but that was just kind of a funny trip for that team. Ryan, as always, lean on you, your account. Anything to take away from this at all? I mean, they just spanked a couple teams that they're better than, seems like.
Yeah. The biggest thing is for me, next year with the Big 12 adding BYU, Houston, Cincinnati, those bye weeks in the Big 12 play are going to disappear, and that's why you have random weird weekends like this. Like a week or two ago, OSU had to play a doubleheader with Incarnate Word because it's hard to find those games. So that's my first takeaway is you don't have to do this next year probably. But they didn't kind of get that revolving door of pitchers that we've seen thrown at them, and I don't think they're going to get that this weekend in Waco because Baylor can throw Orm and probably feel pretty good about that. So it felt like a more normal weekend, and the offense looked more normal. The biggest thing for me, Sydney Sanders got her second home run of the year, and she played a lot better at the plate, and Alita Torres also got a home run. So maybe that could be a weird way of it was a weird weekend. One of the games got scrapped because of weather and all that stuff. But if you went in and it was a confidence builder after an odd kind of 5 or 6 games with pitcher roulette, and if you can get Sanders and Torres feel any little bit better heading into Waco, then I think Oklahoma will take that.
Yeah, no complaints on OU softball this week. Last week, 10-1, and what was it, 13-1 against Louisville and Miami. Probably a good thing they didn't play that third game. If they're beating the 2 best teams in that group, 10-1 and 13-1, who knows what that score would have been. But then you follow that up, and you've got the WPF draft.
Yeah.
Ryan, holy cow, Sooners populating that thing, including the number 1 pick in the draft with Alex Storako. This is why she comes to Oklahoma from a place like Michigan. You know, taking that next step, taking her game that one more push, that little extra coaching, that little extra whatever it is, competition. You get to come to Oklahoma and look around and see the standard, literally the standard for softball, what it looks like. You get to not only see what it looks like, you get to live it. So for her to do that, to leave Michigan people are probably going, why the hell would you leave? I mean, I know Oklahoma, but why would you leave Michigan? Well, this is why. She's the number 1 pick in the draft.
Yeah, she was number 1 pick. Haley Lee also taken by the Oklahoma City Spark. So it'll be interesting to see if they sign on at the end of this year. I would imagine Storako's going to sign on. Talking with Tina Floyd, the owner GM, I've been interested of how does the draft process work? Because the season's going on right now. Players can't sign until after their eligibility's gone. Are you able to even hit up the players and say, are you interested in professional softball, stuff like that? And basically, Tina Floyd, she had said, that's about it. That's about all you can do is reach out and be like, would you potentially be interested? Yes, no. And then from there, it then shuts back down because you're a professional league. So, and that's why I think that you saw some of the weirdness. I know a lot of people may have looked at that and go, Grace Lyons, why was she not taken in the first round? I think she was taken a late round by the Texas Smoke. We saw a blast in the past on the OU softball front just this week. Mackenzie Donahue, who's at Tennessee, she was doing an Instagram live thing, and she was like, I don't care to play professional softball. Whenever my collegiate career is done, I'm good. I'm done. I'm dusted. I'm moving on. So that's not something that every single player is just looking to pursue, just like, the NFL we're so used to. So I'd keep that in mind. But also on May 8th, there's the Athletes Unlimited draft. That's the other league that's running. So it'll be interesting to see how those players get viewed differently if not. But you'd have to imagine that if Storako went number one overall, first off, she's had an excellent year, but also she's probably said, yeah, I probably have some interest in playing in this league if that was kind of your pick at number one overall.
Yeah, you got to think the salary structure is not going to be something that over the course of however many 3 months is that how long the season is?
It's at 40 games, yeah.
Yeah, they're going to pay you enough to live for the entire year, or you know, this isn't NBA money, this isn't NFL money, this isn't Major League Baseball money. So I could see where girls would be saying at some point, you know what, I'm good, I've got my degree from OU, I'm going to go start my career.
Right. Decisions to be made there. So we'll see how that goes. I got to imagine revenge on the mind, right, this weekend. That's the only team that beat them is Baylor. So probably some
100%.
Probably some run rules on the way there and at the scene of the crime in Waco. All right. Over in baseball, it's bad. It's bad right now. There's not a lot of positive things to spin at the moment. I mean, the Texas Tech series over the weekend, Norman, was competitive. Obviously, they lost the first game in extra innings, lost on Saturday 9-5, and they run ruled Texas Tech actually on Sunday, which just kind of shows you the up and down nature of the season that they've had. That they could run rule a team as good as Texas Tech, a legit Omaha contender, and Omaha, just whatever the word I'm looking for here is, they're used to being there. They're there regularly. But the first two games didn't go as they wanted, and then they had Bedlam last night in Stillwater. Gave 19 runs to the Pokes. The pitching is just not performing. They can score runs. This team can hit and score runs. They have speed. They play pretty good defense. But the pitching just overall is just not where it needs to be, and you just flat out cannot win if your pitching is not slowing teams down. I mean, you look at all these losses. I mean, for Oklahoma recently, I mean, they score 7 runs in a loss, 5 runs in a loss. Last night, 8 runs in a loss. These are numbers, 6 runs in a loss, just like scanning these are numbers that are usually going to be good enough to get you wins, and they're just not because they can't keep anybody under wraps right now. So it's not going well. There's still some season left here, but we are now past the point. People were like trying to do the thing of this is around the time last year where they took off. We're past that point now. At this point last year, they were starting to really rev it up. I actually looked last night on this same day. Last night was game 38. Game 38 last year, they beat Kansas in Lawrence 24-4. So that shows you what they were doing at this time last year. They were starting to rev it up, and it hasn't happened yet. There's still some time, but you're running out of time quickly. So they got a lot of work to do to even get onto the bubble right now. There's still some season left, but not great.
The question just becomes, how much can they try to salvage any sort of momentum on the recruiting trail? That way it's like, hey, the season's not the repeat season, but if they go get some better showings, what can Skip kind of do with that to get some pitching in next year that can help that offense out?
Yeah, you hope you can keep that because you still have a lot of momentum, like donors and stuff like that. You have new facilities on the way. The SEC move will help. But right now, if you're a pessimist OU fan, what you're saying right now is 2021 was a really rough year. The first half of last year was really rough. Then they got very hot, and obviously we know what they did. And now this year is kind of back to being really rough. So you're feeling right now what you're fearful of if you're an OU baseball fan right now, and the word that every OU player doesn't want to hear and every OU fan doesn't want to hear is that was last year a fluke? Was that run a fluke? That's the scary feeling right now. There's still a lot of talent on that team. Like I said, they can score runs. They can really hit. And they got speed everywhere. There's exciting players on this team, but they got to figure out the pitching side of it. Obviously, you can't be giving up 19 runs to Oklahoma State. I mean, that kind of goes without saying. So we'll see what they do. Doesn't get any easier. They go to Austin this weekend. Texas is in the top 15. Might be more rough times or a potential season-changing weekend. That can happen at any time. Baseball's weird that way. So we'll see what happens in Austin. Who didn't seem like he had anything you wanted to add? Who do you have anything?
No. I got nothing on baseball.
You need to rev him up, man. This is where you come in to rev him up for the home stretch.
Podcast is recording. John Hoover has nothing to say about baseball. Play that back in the locker room.
Wrapping up real quick here. Last thing. Got to give a little bit of time to women's gym. They win the Natty again. This is 6 out of 9. 6 out of 9. That's the dumbest stat ever to win 6 out of 9 in anything. Because 2020 didn't happen. very well might have been 7 out of 10 if 2020 had occurred, but it didn't happen. They won over the weekend, and that program is just an absolute machine. Deserves all the credit in the world. What can you say, guys? I mean, that program is just absolutely unbelievable. KJ Kindler has built a monster that's hard to see it ever slowing down.
6 out of 9, and I think they had 2 runner-ups in that span.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
So yeah, that's not bad. KJ is an amazing coach, and the standard that she set, the athletes that she recruits, and then the way she develops talent and builds young athletes into champions is nothing short of remarkable. Just for, we're not experts on gymnastics. I'm not going to sit here and portray that we are, but just watch the semifinals and watch the national championship, and you'll see somebody like Olivia Troutman, who's a 5th-year senior, who was medically recommended that she give up gymnastics and you really should retire and your body's all beat up. What does she do in the championships? She rolls 2 9.95s. I'm gonna show y'all how to do this. She's extreme 8-time All-American. She's extremely underrated. We talk about Maggie Nichols, and we talk about there's so many. There's just such a long list of OU gymnasts. She's one of those ones that's just going to be underrated kind of forever, I think. And she's a 2-time champion. No, 2-time champion. I can't remember. I think 3. So what a way to finish your career.
Well, and KJ Kindler's doing this too in a time where the sport has seen a little bit of flux because of name, image, and likeness. That means that the Olympians, that basically if you make the Olympics, you're almost kind of disqualifying yourself from college gymnastics because of the endorsement opportunity, stuff like that. They come back in, like most notable, like Suni Lee at Auburn. Well, that hasn't slowed Oklahoma down the last 2 years at all, right? The fact that there's a little bit more competition, just a little bit, as far as a couple more gymnasts that can come in and kind of change things. That I just think that shows you it's not just the recruiting, but what you said, the development part of how the gymnasts continue to get better and better under KJ Kindler at Oklahoma. It's fun to watch when you can watch just an elite coach set up shop like that and continue to have almost this assembly line of just superstar after superstar.
One of the things that needs to be noted about this too is that ESPN enjoyed their highest. They put it on ABC. Okay, here's something for you. The men's gymnastic championship, which the scoring is different. It's a little bit jacked up, if you ask me. There's more events. It's harder to keep up with. But the men's gymnastics was on NCAA.com, and you need a membership. You need to sign up to watch it. The women's was on ABC. All you got to do is flip in Tulsa Channel 8, and there you got women's gymnastics. That shows you where the sport has kind of diverged and how the women's game has blown up. It's bigger than it's ever been, and ESPN enjoyed a record 1.02 million viewers for that thing. So very impressive.
Yeah, pretty cool. Women's sports are kind of having a moment right now in general because the women's tournament in basketball was the biggest year ever, and WWS gets bigger every year. So pretty cool. And, just my last thought, and we'll say bye. Too, it's important to note, like, they get beat. Like, they lose they lost this year in the regular season, but they continue to win the title. Like, there's something to be said for the fact that they just step up in the Natty every year with 4 teams going head to head, and they find a way to win it seemingly every year when it's not like it's not only a situation where it's like they're just so much better than everybody that it's not even like a competition. Like, they do occasionally lose, but when the chips are down, they win every, when it matters most, they win every time, which is absurd. And it's Kindler and Gasso, 1A, 1B for best coach on campus. It's not even
the women's team. I saw a tweet yesterday. They've started 39-1 each of the last 3 years. They've won 39 out of their first 40 games each year.
They're jockeying. Gasso will win another one here in June, and then they'll be like, okay, we're back to 6 each, and they just keep going back and forth, just trading titles. All right, I think that's it for us. We'll be back on Saturday, post-game show at the stadium after the spring game. So we're bringing that back on Saturday. So hope you'll tune in either Saturday night or Sunday morning whenever that show gets up. Who knows how long it'll take to get through everything. But watch us recap the spring game live from the stadium. Not live. Well, kind of. I don't know what. Does that count as live? I don't know. From the stadium, we'll be there and we'll wrap it all up for you. Our full immediate thoughts on the day's events on Saturday. So we'll see you then. Again, you can catch that show either Saturday night or Sunday morning, whenever it gets up and best works for you, on iTunes, Spotify, Google, iHeart, wherever you get your podcast. If you have an Amazon-enabled device, just say, Alexa, play the AllSooners podcast. Also post on our website, allsooners.com. Click on the playlist on your phone, your tablet, or your computer, and you can watch all the shows as well, including the postgame show, on Drew's YouTube page, John Hoover Media. Make sure to like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. All right, we'll see you on Saturday from the stadium. That's it for now. For Ryan Chapman and John Hoover, I'm Josh Callaway. We'll see you on Saturday.